Hey everyone, it's Mace1370. Today we are going to do a debut / showcase for the new ML5 hero, Solitaria. You can see her in the lobby here. She has these cool little thought bubble animations. It looks like she's maybe dreaming of Prince Charming, or maybe that's what she's reading about in her book. But she seems like a pretty cool hero. She has a few unique mechanics in her kit. The first is her passive. It completely prevents the enemy team from gaining focus. So the two big units for that are going to be SSB and Rylet. Will not be able to gain focus at all while Solitaria is on the battlefield. That's only the enemy. If they're on your team, they will still gain focus. Her skill 3 here has a pretty good multiplier. It's about 1.8. It decreases the enemy's buffs duration for 1 turn, and then this is a single target ability. Will push them back and stun them. And it'll give her stealth for 2 turns. You can soul burn it to increase that to 3 turns. So since this is a 3-turn cooldown after you mola it, you are essentially being permanently stealth between skill 3s. So if you don't soul burn it, you will be in stealth for 2 turns. She'll have 1 turn outside of stealth, and then she'll have her skill 3 the next turn. If you soul burn, then she will be in stealth after you use the S3, and then she'll still be in stealth when her S3 comes back up, and you can S3 again. So she could potentially permanently hide in stealth if you're able to, keep soul burning that. Her skill 1 on her turn is AoE, and has a 25% chance to stun, which is pretty cool. Basically Dizzy's ability, except it's only AoE on her turn. And the last thing to note is that when she is buffed at the start of the turn, has a 100% chance to gain Daydream, which is a unique buff and basically gives her Syra Ren. So her attacks will inflict a random debuff, either decrease attack, hit, speed, or cannot be buffed. So on her skill 1, that's an AoE. She could potentially put 4 debuffs and then also 4 stuns onto the enemy team. More likely, you're going to get some resistance stuff, so it's going to be some mixture of that. So I thought about how I wanted to build her. Because this skill 3 has a pretty good multiplier, you could consider building her as a damage unit. I still think that's a viable option. The route that I went to test her here, I'm trying to pull up her stats, and I'm just totally failing. There we go. I wanted her to go as a really speedy debuffer. I guess ideally as a counterpick to SSB or Rylet. So I built her at 280, and then, as tanky as I could get her while giving her a little bit of effectiveness. So you can see the gear here. I don't think that you necessarily need her on immunity at this speed, although it would definitely be helpful. Units like Acid could stun her and get the first turn, preventing her from doing her thing. But if you're drafting her like this, you're probably going to be drafting her, as a last 4th or 5th pick, so you don't really have to worry about Acid in those scenarios. So I don't think she strictly needs immunity. In terms of her artifact, I went ahead and gave her Violin because her S1 is AoE, so that's a lot of opportunity to strip buffs away, which is, I think, a valuable thing to have. I think you could easily put Abyssal Crown on her. I think that'd be good. Book could also be good, like in an aggressive comp. Book is always good. It's like never bad to run Book. There's sometimes some slightly better options in certain scenarios, but Book is always a solid choice. I thought about Edeca's Scepter also, to decrease your skill cooldown, but this is going to come off cooldown pretty fast, and if you're soul burning, Edeca's would just completely, I guess it would still allow you to skill 3 more often. So potentially you could do that as well. So let's see, did I show these? I can't remember if I showed the right side or not. Anyway, so that's her build. I looked at the potential, to put her on a damage type build, and I wasn't super impressed with the damage numbers. I think you still would need to run her around 260 speed because you want her to outspeed Rylets potentially. You want to be able to take her into speed Rylets so that she can, prevent him from getting focus. And if you build her at 260 speed, it is really hard to get her offensive stats above 3k attack and 250 crit damage. If you have super premium gear, you can probably do it, but it is a real struggle to do that. And as an example, I plugged those numbers into damage calculator, and I said if I have 3k attack and 250 crit damage, if I had S3 unit with 1100 defense, it would only do, I think, about 7,500 damage, which is just not very much. And her S1 has not the best multiplier because it's AoE. So I don't know if it's worth losing these defensive stats to get that damage. That's kind of why I wanted to test it. So we can go through a couple games that I did, and we can see how she performed, and discussed if maybe this type of build or perhaps a damage build would be more effective. So I hope you enjoy. Alright, so this first match is against Big Smo. He pre-bans Falconer Clury, and I pre-ban Fairy Tale Tenebria. The only reason I'm pre-banning Fairy Tale Tenebria here is because I figure many of them are going to be built faster than my Solitaria, and I want to try to draft her and test her out, and it would be really hard to do that if the enemy has, a unit that's faster than mine. So I'm just banning out a common speed threat here. The opponent takes General Purgus first pick, which is a pretty standard opener. So I have a few options. I decide that if I want to get Solitaria into the draft, not necessarily as just a counter pick to a focus unit, I'm probably going to have Ambitious Tywin. The reasoning for that is I did a few matches prior to this one in placement. I was on a guild chat on Discord, we were talking about it, and when Tywin's on the field, it's just really hard for her S1 to do anything at all. All the debuffs she's applying, he's cleansing off the majority of them. So it's very awkward to use her. Also, if you skill 3 someone, and push them back and stun them, there's a chance you're going to follow up with an AoE to that, and then Tywin cleanses off the stun, and that takes away a lot of her value, right? Which is really negating the first 1 1/3 turns of a unit on the board, and removes a lot of the advantage you would get by bringing her. So that's why I bring a Tywin, and then I bring LR Crow because I don't want to give my opponent the G-Perk LR Crow, combo. That's a lot of damage coming at me. Also, it's denying immunity to the opponent, one of the the potential immunity buffers with LR Crow. So he takes Landy and T Crozet. So probably testing out T Crozet here early in the season, who I think is a really solid hero. I like him quite a bit. So I decide that I need AoE here. We're going to need to be able to reach that Landy somehow. I take Basar, who I think is good here because he'll be able to put buff block on the Landy, and even if the T Crozet cleanses away the buff block so that Landy can go back into stealth, I'm still going to have the A Tywin, to break her out and to, stun and slow her. So I think this will put me in a good position. I take Speed Arby here because I basically just want to blow up that Landy, and I think that I'm in a good spot to get first turn here since I have Basar, who's built pretty quick, and my plan is that I'm going to take Solitaria last, another speed threat, who will allow me to take first turn. So the opponent takes Emma Luluka, which to me indicates that they're probably banning Basar, at least as the board state stands right now, because Emma Luluka would need to take first turn. Even if I have Basar, she's not going to do that, and she's just going to die and do nothing. So we go up here and pick our Solitaria of the Snow. And just because I didn't want my Arby to die, I thought about banning the Emma Luluka, and then I kind of realized that that was a bad decision since I have 2 speed threats. I'm taking first turn here. I could just push Emma Lulu back, and she would just die. So this was kind of a silly ban on my part. I shouldn't have done that. Probably should have banned either the Little Queen Charlotte or the T Crozet and gotten rid of some of their immunity. So that was really dumb. You can see me circling the Team Lulu there saying, oh, whoops, that was a stupid ban. But it is what it is. So Basar was banned out. We still get the opener with our Solitaria. And I decide to push back the Landy. It's nice to, get immunity off of her, since it will allow us to debuff her with Arby, who's up next. And this will really force the hand of Big Smo to use his T Crozet S3 onto the Little Queen Charlotte, to cleanse her off. Which then means that when Landy gets CC'd by Tywin, etc., he will not have the cleanse for her. I think he took Little Queen Charlotte here because he wanted an Adamant Shield, I would imagine. And he has the Aureus effect with T Crozet, so it's kind of like the dual protection for Landy. He skill 3s into Arby and kills the Arby. That's the first life. Arby comes back, gets the wrong Gab, unfortunate. So Arby not doing a whole heck of a lot here, unfortunately. But we still have the Tywin and Crow follow-up, which should do a solid amount of damage. I feel like I'm a bit on the back foot here. And I want to take out that Landy as soon as possible before she can do too much damage. So I don't think I have the luxury of soul burning my ML Tywin, so I have to use it now, since I don't have the souls. I get quite a few stuns, which is really huge. And now we're able to soul burn the Eller Crow, so he's probably going to be able to get back to his skill 3 hopefully by the end of the fight and get, you know, another one of those off. Doing quite a bit of damage. You can see how much T. Crozet really soaks up. He's taken more damage than the Landy has, which is pretty crazy. So now a little bit of an unfortunate situation. Our Solitaria is all AoE all the time on her skill 1, and so she's going to be really pushing that team forward because of the G perk passive. She does apply some debuffs though, which is helpful. I think she puts the buff block on Landy, so she will not be able to go back into stealth. LQC does get backup immunity, which is potentially a problem. I go after the Landy here because this is his biggest source of damage. We really need to get her dead ASAP, and she's pretty close to being dead here. And yes, we do manage it. LQC is on Hellcutter, so he really does not have much sustain. If his LQC can get back around to skill 3, then she'll be able to heal up. He might have burned it in the beginning. She gets back to her skill 3 very quickly, so I think there's a good chance she's going to be able to. I forgot to check the skill cooldowns. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so LQC has it up again. So she is going to heal, which is problematic. He goes into the Crow because Crow soul burned. Luckily, Crow was able to live. So here we skill 1 with Tywin into the LQC to prevent the push up from G-Perg, and we get double stun there from Solitaria, which is really huge. And now we can skill 3 onto the LQC and push her back and stun her and just totally shut off that damage. And it actually just kills her, and he concedes. Okay, so this game will be an example of how not to draft Solitaria, or at least how not to counter SSB. So the opponent also pre-bans F10 and first picks Cerise, which is interesting. Like, I don't know if that indicates that they're cleaving. Like, usually that's how you see Cerise used these days, at least as an opener like this. So since I suspect the cleave, one of the things that I consider is I want to take mitigation, and FCC is a good, mitigation hero, so I take her. And I also want to put myself in a position to be able to counteract a debuff heavy team. So my options for that are essentially a Tywin I could take. I could also take a cleanser, but I feel like this is a little early to take a cleanser, since if they don't go debuffs, then that cleanser is not going to be very useful, whereas a Tywin is going to be useful pretty much no matter what. Unless they heavily counterpick him, which would also be fine. So here they take Kayron and SSB, which is interesting. It is a placement game, so you never know. What people's strategies are. And taking those two units is interesting, so I decided to take Rowana and SSB here to counteract, Rowana and LR Crow to counteract the SSB, and the opponent takes Ravi and Politis. So I don't think the Politis will really do anything here. The only thing with the non-attack skill is my Rowana. Here I take Solitaria, and I'm definitely going to ban the Ravi because I have very little damage on my team, and I don't want the Ravi to solo me, which I think there'd be a high possibility of that. To take out Ravis, you need a lot of high, concentrated damage in a short amount of time. My team is going to be, chipping and poking and, occasionally like doing a little bit of AoE with, Crow and stuff. So not really a team to take out a Ravi. But unfortunately, this puts me in the position now, since they banned the LR Crow, of having Rowana, LR Crow, and Solitaria. And I think this was obviously overkill on my part to pick all of those three. I don't think I needed to do that. Realistically, I should have just taken probably LR Crow and Solitaria, and I wouldn't have needed to take Rwana there, but it is what it is. So I think my point is that it is very hard to take two counter pick units, right? You can't take Solitaria and Rwana, because Solitaria here you're going to see will completely shut off SSB's ability to generate focus. Without focus, SSB will not be counterattacking. Without counterattacks, Rwana will not be healing. So that also hurts because those counterattacks plus the heal basically mean free stacks for my LR Crow, who will then do a ton of damage. So you just don't need the Solitaria in that situation. I think the times where you would want to pick her would be like towards the end of a draft, also against an SSB where they have like pre-banned or they've taken one of these other units. And I think in those scenarios she will be valuable, since it is a fairly common strategy for people to try to do. But that said, I still think I have, the damage from my LR Crow in this scenario to take out the enemy team, since they're all quite squishy. And my team is very tanky, and I don't think of any threat of, dying here. So Charon's going to go on the Solitaria, which I think is a mistake for the opponent. Like, I think my Solitaria is actually helping him more than hurting him, since it's preventing SSB from ramping up the LR Crow, and powering up the Rwana. You can see even on the S3, not even a counter thing, she's just getting no stacks at all. My priority here is to take out the Charon, since he's the main source of damage. I don't want to take out the Politis, or I mean I do, but I just don't need to. She's not doing anything right now. So I can use Solitaria here to push back and stun the Charon. So even, if the enemy doesn't have a focus unit, I think Solitaria is a good counter to Charon, since she strips and stuns. And that's kind of his kryptonite, right? She doesn't put buff block, but that stun is enough, since Charon is usually squishy enough you can just take right down. So potentially another slot she could be put in would be Speedy with crit, as like a CDOM pusher. And, if the enemy picks like a counter Charon, you could use her in that scenario to push your CDOM and lock the Charon down, so Charon can't do anything. And even if Charon's not there, you could potentially use her in a cleave setup, I think. I kind of do want to test her with damage, since this really speedy debuff build, I'm not sure if it does enough. The debuffs are not strong enough to really cripple the enemy team like Dizzy does, and her stuns are not reliable enough to, keep the team stunned. When they pop off, like, they're pretty funny, but when they don't, I just don't think it's enough to be viable on its own. I think this type of build would be totally fine if you just want to slot her in as a counter pick to like SSB or Rylet. But using her beyond that, I think it might have to be damage. Obviously more testing needs to be done, and once I theorycraft out a damage build, I'll do another video showing that. Here I'm just leaving SSB for last, since with Solitaria on the board she does literally nothing. And I think that's going to wrap this one up, so thanks for watching. I hope this was illuminating. Later.